This is the story about an adventure that took place in 1380s when two brothers supposedly were caught in a storm and wrecked at the foreign shore of the mythological island of Frislandia. The Zeno brothers, Nicolò and Antonio, were Italian noblemen from the Republic of Venice who lived during the 14th century. They came to prominence in 1558 when their descendant, Nicolò Zeno the Younger, published a map and a series of letters purporting to describe an exploration made by the brothers of the North Atlantic and Arctic waters in the 1390s. The younger Nicolò claimed the documents were discovered in a storeroom of his family home. The Zeno family was part of the Venetian elite. Indeed, their family had controlled the monopoly over transport between Venice and the Holy Land during the Crusades. The letters that was discovered in a basement storeroom contained a map describing islands not seen on any other maps and undiscovered territories filled with strange names. The map was accompanied with some documents describing a journey to the places. Widely accepted at the time of publication, the map was incorporated into the works of leading cartographers, including Gerardus Mercator. Modern historians and geographers have disputed the veracity of the map and the described voyages, with some accusing the younger Zeno of forgery. The letters described a long voyage made by the Zeno brothers in the 1390s under the direction of a prince named Zichmni. Supporters of a legend involving the contemporaneous Scottish nobleman Henry Sinclair, Earl of Orkney, suggest that Zichmni is a mistranscription of Dorkney. The voyage supposedly traversed the North Atlantic and, according to some interpretations, reached North America nearly a century before the voyages of Christopher Columbus. Some had suggested that a descendant, William Sinclair, the builder of Rosslyn Chapel, had knowledge of Henry Sinclair's involvement with the Zeno brothers and had decorated the interior of the chapel with carvings of plants discovered during the voyage. This claim of proof that the voyage took place has been discredited. The letters are divided into two parts. The first set contains letters from Nicolò to Antonio. The second consists of letters from Antonio to their brother Carlo. The first letters, from Nicolò to Antonio, tell how Nicolò set off in 1380 on a voyage from Venice to England and Flanders. Evidence exists that such a voyage took place and that Nicolò returned to Venice around 1385. In the letters, Nicolò describes being stranded on an island between Great Britain and Iceland called Frislanda, which is described as being larger in size than Ireland. By chance, Nicolò is rescued by Zichmni, who is described as a prince who owned some islands called Porlanda off the southern coast of Frislanda, and who ruled the Duchy of Sorant, or Sorand, southeast of Frislanda. It has been suggested that Frislanda is in fact a stand-in for the Faroe Islands, with individual islands mistakenly merged into a single landmass by Nicolò the Younger, although Freeland and the Faroe Islands appear together on several maps, many hundreds of miles apart. Nicolò invites Antonio to come to Frislanda with him, which he does, staying for 14 years. Under Zichmni's direction, Antonio attacks Estlanda, ostensibly the Shetland Islands, as indicated by similarities between place names mentioned in the letters. Zichmni then attempts to attack Iceland. After finding it too well defended, he attacks 7 islands along its eastern side: Bres, Talas, Broas, Iskant, Trans, Mimant, and Damberg. All of these islands are fictitious. An alternative interpretation finds that in transcribing the letters, the Zeno brothers' descendant mistook a reference to Estlanda for Eilanda or Iceland, thus accounting for both the presence of those superfluous islands off Iceland and the mysterious absence of an equal number of islands off of the Shetland Islands. Further evidence in support of this claim is the similarity of place names in the Xenos Eilanda to place names in modern-day Shetland. For instance, the island of Bressay for Bres, and Danneberg sound near Lerwick for Damberg. Zichmni then builds a fort on Bres and leaves Nicolò in charge of it. Nicolò makes a voyage to Greenland and finds a monastery with central heating. According to the alternative interpretation cited above, in which the travelers had yet to leave Estlanda, the subsequent destination is in fact Iceland, explaining the presence of geothermal heating and other observations. Zichmni receives word that a group of lost fishermen from Frislanda have returned after an absence of over 25 years. The fishermen describe making landfall in the far west in unknown countries called Estotiland and Drogea. They claim to have encountered strange animals as well as cannibals from whom they escaped only after teaching the cannibals how to fish. Inspired by the tales of the fishermen, Zichmni undertakes a voyage to the west with Antonio in charge of his fleet. To the west of Frislanda, they encounter a large island called Icaria, which does not exist. According to the letters, the inhabitants of Icaria greet them before they can make landfall. Only one person among the Icarians is able to speak a language that Zichmni understands. The inhabitants state that visitors to the island are not welcome and that they will defend the island to the last man if need be. Zichmni sails along the island looking for a place to make landfall, but the inhabitants chase him and Zichmni abandons the effort. Sailing west, they make landfall at a promontory called Trin on the southern tip of Engrualanda. Zichmni likes the climate and the soil, but his crew find it inhospitable. The sailors return home with Antonio, while Zichmni stays on to explore the area and build a town. Here is a description of the map. Estotiland appears on the Zeno map ostensibly on the western side of the Atlantic Ocean, in the approximate location of what is now known to be Labrador, on the northeast coast of North America. Estotiland is listed along with Eden and Arcadia under the heading Utopia, Paradise, Heaven, Heaven on Earth, in Rogers' International Thesaurus. It is one of the sources for the Russian Estoti, featured in Vladimir Nabokov's Ada. Friesland appeared on virtually all maps of the North Atlantic from the 1560s to the 1660s. It is not to be confused with the similarly named Friesland in the Netherlands, nor the two Frieslands, east and north, in Germany. The place name originally referred to Iceland, Friesland, but after the Zeno map placed it as an entirely separate island south, or occasionally southwest of Iceland, it appeared that way on maps for the next 100 years. The other islands. Ilanda is clearly Iceland. Estland is presumed to be Shetland, with various placer names recognizable as belonging to that island group. It has been tentatively suggested that Podalida is a corruption of Pomona, a historical name for mainland, Orkney. Icaria, or Caria, if the initial I means island, has been suggested as a misplaced Kerry or Kilda, but may simply be an invention of the mapmaker. Naomi has been identified as Fair Isle or Fula. Controversy and criticism. The account of the voyages given by the younger Nicolò continues to attract debate. Some of the islands the Zeno brothers allegedly visited either conflate existing locations or do not exist at all. Research has shown that the Zeno brothers were occupied elsewhere when they were supposedly doing their exploring. Contemporary Venetian court documents place Nicolò as undergoing trial for embezzlement in 1394 for his actions as military governor of Modone and Corone in Greece from 1390–1392. He wrote his last will and testament in Venice in 1400, many years after his alleged death in Frislanda around 1394. There is disagreement about the brothers' whereabouts at the time of the supposed voyages, with some readings of archival records placing the brothers in Venice at that time. Andrea di Robilon suggests this interpretation is in error. According to the Dictionary of Canadian Biography online, the Zeno affair remains one of the most preposterous and at the same time one of the most successful fabrications in the history of exploration. Herbert Wrigley Wilson described and analysed the story at length in the Royal Navy, a history from the earliest times to the present, and was sceptical about its veracity, noting, at the date when the work was published, Venice was extremely eager to claim for herself some share in the credit of Columbus's discoveries, as against her old rival Genoa, from whom Columbus had sprung. De Robilon disagrees, stating that the younger Nicolò was a first-class muddler, not a fable-monger, whose inaccuracy was the result of second-hand retelling that still contains much of the truth of his forebears' voyages. Modern views. Most historians regard the map, an accompanying narrative as a hoax perpetrated by the younger Zeno to make a retroactive claim for Venice as having discovered the New World before Christopher Columbus. The evidence against the authenticity of the map is based largely on the appearance of many phantom islands in the North Atlantic and off the coast of Iceland. One of these non-existent islands was Friesland, where the Zeno brothers allegedly spent some time. Current scholarship regards the map as being based on existing maps of the 16th century, in particular, the Olaus Magnus map of the North, the Carta Marina, the Kaarta van Oostland of Cornelis Anthony Zoon, Claudius Clavis type maps of the North. At the time of publication, the account attracted little to no suspicion. It was no more and no less fantastic than most other voyage and travel accounts of the time. Girolamo Ruscelli published a version of the Zeno map in 1561, only 3 years after it appeared in Zeno's original work. Ruscelli was a Venetian publisher who also released an Italian translation of Ptolemy. Ruscelli had moved to Venice in 1549, where he became a prominent editor of travel writings and geography. Scholars still enjoy trying to assign the Zeno Islands to real geographic features. For example, Friesland is thought to be part of Iceland, while Esland is supposed to be the Shetlands. Some still believe the Zenos to have sailed to these lands. Most, however, view the voyage and the map as a reminder of the folly and fancy and fun of early travel literature and cartography. Whatever the truth, the Zeno map and its islands are one of the most enduring mysteries in the history of cartography.